Good evening, everybody. We'll go ahead at 6 o'clock. We'll go ahead and get started so that we can be respectful of everyone's time here in the room and those watching online this evening. But I want to welcome you to our town hall this evening. And it's one of, I think, our favorite town halls to do each year based upon one element, definitely, and that's when we do our Meridian Stars Awards. But we're going to be focusing on three things this evening. We're going to hear from Superintendent Bub and get information for the community about the West State School District Supplemental Levy, which is on the ballot that you can be voting for right now during early voting here at Meridian City Hall, as well as a few other places around the valley. But we do have offer that from 8 to 5 each day here at Meridian City Hall. So we'll hear from Dr. Bub first, and then we'll have a presentation on the Aarp Livability Initiative that I spoke about in the state of the city earlier this year. So we'll get a flavor about what that means and what we'll be focusing on here as a city over the next couple of years as we look at ways to improve our overall livability in our city for all age groups. And we'll conclude this evening with some acknowledgement of some of our finest and brightest in the city with the Meridian Stars Awards. So with that, we do have one of our council members in the room, Councilman Holcomb. I think we'll be joined by a few others later this evening, as well as some of our department directors or representatives from our department. So at the end of the evening, if you have any questions about city operations, we should be able to have someone on hand that can help answer any questions in case you have them. So with that, we will go ahead and move on to our first item this evening. So I'd welcome Dr. Bub up to talk about the West State School District Supplemental Levy.
Thank you guys so much, and I just want to thank the City of Meridian for putting on this event. Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for always being a good partner with West State School District and in our community. So thank you. I'm here to talk tonight a little bit about supplemental levy that's going to be on the upcoming ballot and kind of where we're at with that. And this is a renewal of supplemental levy. This is not a brand new levy. It's a renewal of a levy that every 2 years we go back to the voters and we try to renew this levy. A little bit about this levy and what it really pays for. It's currently a 2-year levy. It expires at the end of this fiscal year. So it would expire at the end of this, in July of this year. It's a $14 million levy. This helps us pay for staffing, classified staff, certificated staff, and educational needs that directly impact our classroom every single day. The funding for the overall levy is used to cover day-to-day costs. It makes up about 5% of what our budget is. As we think about what 5% is, that 5%, when you're talking about a district of 40,000 kids, about 5,000 employees, that's a huge cut to be able to cut 5,000 or to cut 5% off of that if the levy were not to pass. So it's incredibly important as part of our operations budget that we use this every 2 years. The revenue provided through the current levy helps districts' current programs. It helps our school days. It helps our class sizes. It really helps what we do every day to provide educational opportunities for all of our kids. I hate this slide, but I'm going to do it anyway. This is the doomsday slide, I'll call it. Without this levy, class sizes could go up. We may have to increase class sizes. Right now, we sit at the high school level. We sit our class sizes sit at about 30 to 33 students, depending on the class. I would hate to see those go up. If you've been in a class of 33 teenagers, that becomes pretty packed. Instructional programs we would have to look at. And then work days possibly being cut. The supplemental levy, currently 93 school districts out of 150 school districts in the state of Idaho utilize the supplemental levy program to be able to pay for day-to-day costs such as salaries and benefits for teachers. A little bit about the levy rate. Voters first approved the $14 million levy rate in 2012. At that time, the supplemental levy was $91.60 per $100,000 of taxable property. At the end of the fiscal year 2021, that levy rate is $46.92 per $100,000. That levy rate continues to go down as we grow. Our levy spreads amongst more people, and so that levy rate continues to go down. We currently sit at the lowest levy rate within the Treasure Valley. here's what I'm here to encourage you to do on so many levels, is to come out and vote on November 2nd, whether that be through early voting process here at the city or coming out to vote on election day. You can request absentee ballots for the November 2nd election. The deadline for that is October 29th. You can go to, you can visit idahovotes.gov to be able to request that that absentee ballot. Early voting starts October 18th through the 29th. And right here, and I think that's it's 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. I just saw that time change. Right here at City Hall, I just encourage you guys to vote. Our belief is this: we think that there's a lot of people out there that support education and support what we do every day in the classroom. Our teachers are doing a tremendous job. Our classified staff are doing a tremendous job. We just want to encourage you guys to get out to the polls and let your voice be heard. Thank you. Do you guys have any questions? I'll field any questions that you may have. This is an easy crowd.
Yeah, I know that it's the desire of the city, our partners, to be transparent about what is occurring with your tax dollars. And so this is just another opportunity to get the word out to the community. So hopefully those watching, if they feel a little bit better informed, but you can always reach out to Westside if you've got more questions regarding that. So next up is the AARP Livability Initiative. And I'm going to turn this over to Sahand, who's a new member in my office. And this is going to be a project that he's going to be working on for the next couple of years with in his role with the city. And Sahand, I don't know if you're going to sit over there. You're going to come up here. Okay, we'll turn it over to Sahand.
All right. Thank you so much, Mayor Simison, for that introduction. Good evening, everyone. As the mayor mentioned, my name is Sahand. I'm the Programs and Events Specialist up at the City of Meridian Mayor's Office. And one of the newer programs that I'm coordinating is the Livability Initiative in partnership with AARP. During my presentation tonight, I'm going to give you a broad overview of what the Livability Initiative is. I'm going to talk about why it's important, what the process involved in bringing it about will look like, and I'll also do a bit of a deep dive on an online tool that the AARP has provided for us that helps communities all across the United States get an understanding of the livability conditions in their neighborhoods. So I'll conclude at the end of my presentation by letting you know how you can find out about future opportunities to have your voice heard as we continue developing this initiative. And there will be time for a Q&A at the end. So first things first, taking just a step back and talking about the AARP network of age-friendly states and communities. I'll call it the network for short. It's a national program, and it encourages and promotes age-friendly initiatives in communities all across the United States. And when we talk about age-friendly initiatives, what we're really talking about are policies, projects, and programs that make communities livable for people irrespective of their age, their background, their ability level, their income, or their socioeconomic status, and so on. To give you an example of some age-friendly initiatives that have occurred in other places throughout the US, in Austin, Texas, for example, older residents partnered up with AARP Texas, and they worked together to have an interactive traffic signal installed near one of their busy intersections where fast-moving cars were moving next to their senior center. To give you another example, in one city in Maine, an age-friendly initiative actually resulted in the creation of what they call a tool table, and that's a display of common everyday items that make life easier for people. Things like jar openers and seat belt extenders, common things that make a lot of difference when you have access to them. And so the residents of that city were able to get a look at the display items and borrow them from that tool table. One final example we have from Newport, Vermont. An intergenerational team did an age-friendly initiative there where they established what they called the Fresh Start Community Garden. And that's an urban garden, and it provides access to food in a place where a lot of the residents were finding it difficult to get nutritious and affordable ingredients for their meals. And so this is really where Meridian's Livability Initiative comes in, because by enrolling in this network of age-friendly states and communities, Meridian has made a commitment to go through AARP's process of determining what age-friendly initiatives, what policies, projects, and programs we want to see in our community, and pursuing them and implementing them. Now, why do age-friendly initiatives matter in the first place? Why is livability important? It seems like a very simple question, right? And maybe it has an obvious answer, but one dimension of it really has to do with the changing demographics of the United States and really the entire world. According to our census projections, in the next decade and a half, we're going to hit a pretty significant milestone. By 2034 in this country, it's projected that there will be more people aged 65 and older than there are children under the age of 18. And that's the first time that we're going to see that happen in the history of the US Census. And so when we consider making our community a welcoming place for all residents, we have to take into account the fact that the elderly population in our community, like the elderly population in so many other communities across the nation, is rising. And so that means we have to consider the needs and priorities of our senior citizens when making and implementing our plans. Another reason that age-friendly initiatives are important is because everybody ages, everybody grows up. So when we make our communities more livable for the very young, the very old, and for everyone in between, we're making sure that all people who are living in a community have access to the resources they need and are having their needs met regardless of what stage of life they're in. So whether they're a third grader in elementary school, a college student, a young parent, a mid-career professional, or a retiree, when we plan for older adults, we're really planning for people to reach those ages and those milestones throughout their lives. And so when communities join the age-friendly network, they go through a process of assessment, planning, implementation, and evaluation, all with the ultimate goal of making the communities more livable and age-friendly. Meridian joined this network of age-friendly states and communities earlier this year in May 2021. And enrolling in the network means that we've made a commitment to going through this process in partnership with the AARP. Right now, we're in the very early stages. That's what that red indicates, that's sort of circled. We're right at the assessment stage, and assessment is all about figuring out what the needs and priorities are in our community. So what improvements do our citizens want? What opportunities or gaps exist where an age-friendly initiative, a project, program, or policy, or a combination of them can really make a difference for the better? And so starting next year in the first quarter of 2022, we're going to have opportunities available for Meridian residents to get involved in this assessment process in a variety of ways. And some of those ways include listening sessions, focus groups, and surveys. Now, how does this assessment actually happen? Well, as I mentioned, there's the listening sessions, the focus groups, and the surveys. But in order to conceptualize all the different areas of livability, AARP actually provides us with a couple of very handy tools and frameworks. One of those frameworks is the 8 domains of livability. And those 8 different domains sort of help a community figure out what the different areas are that they can focus their work on. So examples of those domains are transportation, housing, community engagement, and so on. Another framework/tool that AARP provides is the Livability Index, and that's an online resource that actually scores communities in 7 categories based on certain key metrics and based on whether those communities at the local level of the city, at the state level, have certain policies in place that make their communities more livable. So for most of the remainder of this presentation, I'll home in on the Livability Index, this online tool, and show you how Meridian scores in those 7 categories that they have. I'll tease out a couple of data points for each category to give you an idea of what the index as a tool thinks some of our potential opportunity areas and potential gaps are for improving our livability. So really, in other words, together we're going to be taking a very early look at some potential areas where we could improve our community's livability through these age-friendly initiatives. So you'll see on this slide the URL for the Livability Index. Anyone can access it. You can go there right now and input your home address and see what kind of results you'll get. You can enter your cousin's address, your ex-spouse's address. You can compare and get bragging rights over how your scores differ. But for now, let's talk about what the Livability Index actually is. So through a process of data calculation and policy evaluation, the AARP Livability Index is really designed to provide us with a snapshot of a particular community or a particular neighborhood or a particular state's overall quality of life. And so, as I mentioned, communities are scored across those 7 categories. So we've got housing, neighborhood, transportation, environment, health, engagement, and opportunity. And you can see those numbers up there. Those scores are given on a scale from 0 to 100. And the average of those 7 category scores gives us the total index score for a particular place. So Meridian's total index score in this case, you'll see up on that slide, is 56. That's the average of all of the category scores that we've received in the different areas of housing, neighborhood, transportation, and so on. And communities that are scored in the index are compared to one another. So the average community will get a score of 50. Above average communities will get a score above 50. Below average communities will get a score below 50 for whatever the area is that they're looking at. And so the index that's live right now was last updated in 2018, and AARP has plans to actually implement another update next year. But even though this data that's currently on there is from a few years ago, it's still a useful tool for recognizing areas of potential improvement and growth in our community, and for comparing different communities based on their index scores. And so when you look at a particular category on the, are we moving on to the next slide, please? There we go. When you look at a particular category on this livability index, you'll get a detailed breakdown of 2 different sources that influence the score received in that category. So on the one hand, you have metrics, and this is indicated on the left. It's a little bit hard to see, but those are your metrics, and you have policies on the right. Metrics are all the qualitative data that AARP has taken. And so they sort of give a snapshot of how livable a community is at the present based on that data. And all of the metrics have little color-coded circles on the right that indicate how a community ranks compared to other communities in that area. So if they've got a red, they're in the bottom third of communities in the US. If they've got yellow, they're in the middle third. If they've got green, they're in the top third. And if it's white or blank, that means there's not enough data to make a meaningful comparison. So that's metrics on the one hand. On the other hand, you've also got policies, and policies capture steps that communities take to become more livable in the future. They're things that they have in their codes and charters that actually have a commitment to making sure things stay livable in the future. And so you can see that on the right, there are some policies listed as an example, and anything that's white or blank is a policy that's absent or missing. Anything that's grayed out is a policy that exists, and that's what drives the score up for whatever category that is. So in the next few slides, I'll dive into the Meridian scores for some of those categories and see what gaps and opportunities there are based on what this index is actually telling us. Ultimately, the Meridian Livability Initiative will determine what our priorities are as a community based on what the community tells us. And that'll be through the listening sessions, the focus groups, and the surveys. But this index can give us a preliminary idea of what some of those areas we can improve in are at the moment. So we're going to start with housing. Meridian score in this category is 46, just below average, remembering that average is 50. And so in the eyes of the index, housing is all about affordability and access, right? We spend more times in our homes than anywhere else. So housing costs, housing choices, accessibility to affordable housing, these are all critical features that the index takes into account. And the index considers the most livable communities to be those that provide housing opportunities for people of all ages, incomes, and abilities. And so on this slide, I've shared a sample metric from the housing category. That's the little banner that you'll see at the top, and a sample housing policy. That's the banner on the bottom. And so the metric on the slide measures the availability of multifamily housing. There are other metrics in this category. We've just taken one to show as an example. The majority of US homes are single-family detached homes. However, older adults whose children have moved out, whose spouses have passed away, single-parent families, childless couples, these are groups that are looking for different types of housing depending on what their needs are. And so they may all prefer multifamily housing. So the index gives us a snapshot of what percentage of our housing units in the city are multifamily, and it credits us with a higher score if that percentage is a little bit higher. The policy at the bottom tracks whether or not there are any state or local housing trust funds. And housing trust funds allow communities to sort of develop and preserve housing options for low-income residents. In Idaho, lawmakers 30 years ago instituted a housing trust fund, but never funded it. And that's why on our AARP Livability Index, we have it showing no policy in place for that. So addressing the possibility of having a housing trust fund is one potential opportunity for increasing livability here in Meridian. Moving on to the next category, we've got neighborhood. Here we're scored slightly above average with a 52. In the eyes of the index, the neighborhood category is all about access to life, to work, and to play. And that means compact neighborhoods, really, where different services are close by. And it also means that there's good access to transportation options to access more distant services. And so on this slide, we've got a number of metrics that the AARP has scored us on through their Livability Index. And those top three metrics measure our proximity to grocery stores and farmers markets, to parks, and our proximity to libraries. And you can see we rank in the middle third there. And where Meridian really falls short, according to this particular criteria, is public transit. So you'll notice that the metric at the very bottom has a red circle next to it. And that really indicates that Meridian ranks in the bottom third of communities when it comes to public transit. That metric is measuring the number of jobs that are accessible to residents within 45-minute commute using a public transit option. And so it's not by car, but by public transit. And for our city, that number is 0, according to the 2018 data, as a result of the lack of public transit options. The third category we've got here is transportation. The Livability Index credits communities that provide their residents with a variety of options for transportation. And so Meridian's score in this category as of 2018 was a 57, again, above average. We've got two of the metrics that are affecting this score up on this slide. The one metric where we rank in the bottom third of US communities, with the red indicating that, is once again local transit service. And so the index measures that there are 0 buses or trains per hour stopping within a half mile of each neighborhood that's considered part of Meridian. And so another area of improvement where we rank in the middle third in that respect is traffic congestion. It's estimated that the average resident in Meridian spends about 32 hours a year per person in traffic. And so one possibility for improving livability is having access possibly to public transit options that reduce the congestion on our roads. On the policy side, one possible area of improvement at the state level, going a little bit higher, is removing barriers to volunteer driver programs. So that's the banner at the very bottom of this slide. Volunteer driver programs are designed to give access to people who have restricted mobility, giving them a convenient way to get their errands done, go to the grocery store, go to the doctor, all of that. But those programs can face some barriers when it comes to funding, insurance, and licensing. So the AARP does credit states that have policies in place to remove those barriers, and we don't have those in Idaho. For the environment category, the Livability Index has scored us a 51, very slightly above average. This is looking at air and water quality for metrics, but it also measures communities' abilities to create plans and respond to emergencies and natural disasters as well. So in terms of metrics, the environment category here for Meridian calculates that one area where we rank in that bottom third with that red circle is with the number of residents that we have living within 200 meters of a high traffic road. And the reason why it discourages having too high a percentage of people living near those high traffic roads is because it brings them into contact with noise pollution, vehicle exhaust, other emissions that may cause health problems down the road as well. In terms of policies for the environment, the category credits Meridian for having a statewide policy, so this applies to other communities in Idaho as well, that prevents our utilities from being cut off when we have extreme weather events associated with the changing of the seasons. And it also gives us credit, increases our score for being a member of the Ada County Emergency Management Executive Council. And that helps our community prepare for, respond to, and recover from those natural disasters and emergency events that we'd mentioned a little bit earlier. One potential area of improvement with respect to policy here, according to the index, is energy efficiency. So the index gives credit to states, actually, that are ranked in the top quarter of the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economies scorecard. And so what that means is if we have enough energy efficient programs and policies throughout the state to rank in the top quarter of that, we'd be able to see an improvement in our livability score and in our general livability from having those green options available. Moving on to health, this is actually Meridian's highest scored category at 72, well above average. In the eyes of the Livability Index, the most livable communities, what they look for in terms of metrics, are the ones that have smoke-free air laws, the ones that offer easy, convenient access to local exercise opportunities, whether it's exercise equipment at a park or recreational facilities, and they also have high-quality healthcare available. So in terms of metrics, some of the samples that you'll see here on this slide are the percentage of people in our community who smoke regularly, the percentage of people who are considered obese, and the percentage of people who live within a half mile of parks or other recreational facilities. And so the really promising thing here for Meridian is that really in all of the metrics for the health category, we're ranked in the top third of US communities. So this is definitely something that we want to continue seeing improve and staying in that top third. The only exception is that percentage for the number of people who live close enough to parks within a half mile or so. And for that one, they just don't have enough data to make a meaningful comparison with other communities. In terms of policies for health, the index looks for just one thing in the health category, and that's state or local policies that prohibit smoking in workplaces, restaurants, and bars. For the engagement category, the index really is examining the different ways in which residents engage with and support their communities. And so our score for Meridian in this category is a 56. In terms of metrics, what they're looking for in the Livability Index is intranet access. So in the case of Meridian, as of 2018, when they pulled this data, nearly 40% of Meridian residents had access to high-speed, low-cost service. So what they look for is not just that a service is available, but that it reaches the threshold of a certain speed, and that there are multiple vendors offering those services, driving down prices through their competition. One metric that we have that could use improvement, and you'll see that it's red, meaning that we're ranked in the bottom third when comparing with other communities, is the number of cultural, arts, and entertainment institutions in Meridian. So these include things like the number of museums, concert venues, movie theaters, sports stadiums, and it's per 10,000 people. And so the index calculates us at having 0.1 institution per 10,000 people, which does put us at the bottom third of communities. And so there's room for improvement there, certainly. And in terms of policy, moving away from metrics, the index actually gives credit to all of Idaho, all communities and cities in Idaho, for providing a variety of accessible voting options. So that includes early voting, no excuse absentee voting. Having those options means that we're making voting accessible, especially to members of our elderly population. The index does note, however, that one policy that we're missing that would raise our score is the presence of a local human rights commission, which we don't have in Meridian, though there is a statewide Idaho Human Rights Commission. And finally, looking at opportunity, opportunity measures things like income inequality, the number of jobs that are available per worker, the high school graduation rate, the age diversity of the community. And so Meridian's score in this category is a 57, again, above average. And this slide showcases a couple of the different metrics that they're looking at for this. One is the high school graduation rate, and one is our age diversity right at the top. So our high school graduation rate, you'll see here, as of 2018 was 86%. That puts us in the middle third of communities that are ranked in the index. So ensuring that that graduation rate is as close to 100% as possible is always an ongoing pressing priority for any community. On the other hand, the age diversity metric measures how closely the demographics of the different age groups in our community match our national age demographics. So the closer we are to mirroring that national age distribution, having similar numbers of adults and elderly and young people in our community as there are in the entire nation, when you break it down by those categories, allows us to see that we're in a community that's accommodating to people no matter what stage of life they're in, and that isn't really geared towards highlighting one particular age group over another. In terms of policies, the index here shows two gaps in our policy side for opportunity. At the local level, we don't have an official AAA bond rating from S&P. The AARP looks for that as a sign of creditworthiness. For the case of Meridian, we really, we don't borrow, and we haven't paid the funds in order to get that sort of creditworthiness entrusted to us. And at the state level, we don't have a minimum wage level above the federal level of $7.25. And so the index would give us credit and does give credit to other communities that have higher minimum wage levels than what's set apart for our minimum. And so with those past few slides, we were really just looking at teasing out some metrics and policies that are available. And they're available for anyone to look at when you look up Meridian on the AARP Livability Index. The AARP does have just one additional framework for thinking about all the different categories where you can make an impact using age-friendly initiatives. And those are the 8 domains of livability. A lot of these, you'll notice, do overlap with the 7 categories in the Livability Index, but there are slight differences as well. A little bit of overlap here and there, but a little bit of distinctions as well. And so as Meridian begins the assessment process to determine what areas we're going to home in on for the Livability Initiative, these domains will provide the structure when we're doing our facilitated focus groups and listening sessions for figuring out what areas our residents have their priorities set in. So if you do wind up participating in a listening session next year, don't be surprised to see these domains popping up and sort of framing the conversation when thinking about all of the different areas that there could be opportunities to make an impact on. And so we've talked about the Livability Index on the one hand and the domains of livability on the other. And so why do we have these two different frameworks? And I think what it really comes down to is notifying to yourselves what the strengths and weaknesses of these different tools and resources are. So the Livability Index, as we've seen, looks at very specific metrics and very specific policies, regardless of what a community's unique needs are. So for instance, if you remember in Meridian, in the transportation category of the Livability Index, we scored low in terms of public transit options. Now, it could very well be the case when we talk to our residents that for our community, public transit isn't a high priority. maybe residents aren't interested in pursuing that. So that means we wouldn't concentrate our efforts in that area. And as a result, we might not see that category score rise in the livability index the next time it's updated, but we're still, trying to focus on the things that our residents actually care about based on the feedback that they're giving us. However, there might be other areas that they are interested in that fall under the transportation category, like bike paths and walk signals. And so there's merit in thinking about the livability index as one thing, but the domains of livability as another thing, a more flexible category that gives us the option to think more broadly without tying us down to specific metrics and policies that we're looking for. And so far, I've talked to you all a little bit about what the AARP network of age-friendly states and communities is. I've mentioned that Meridian has joined this network, and in doing so has made a commitment to get involved in the process laid out by the AARP for developing age-friendly initiatives. And to recap, we're in the first year of that process, in the very early stages of the assessment phase. And that means that our focus is on getting data about the priorities of Meridian residents. And so during early 2022, as I've mentioned, there will be opportunities for Meridian residents to get involved in that assessment process through the listening sessions, through focus groups, and through surveys that we'll distribute through channels like Nextdoor. And so to stay informed about those opportunities, you can make sure that you're subscribed to our city's newsletter. The link is up there on the slide, meridiancity.org/newsletters. You can make sure that you're following us on our Facebook page, where we'll post information about upcoming opportunities for some of those sessions. And you can also take a look at our Talkify calendar on our website at meridiancity.org/calendar, keeping an eye on that also, where we'll post some of these opportunities as they arise. And finally, just as a note, if the work that you do, whether it's in a professional capacity, whether it's volunteer work, whether it's advocacy related, if whatever work that you're doing aligns with livability, if there's overlap with age-friendly initiatives of any sort, please do feel free to get in touch with us so we can discuss possibilities for collaboration, and we can make sure that we're involving you in some of that assessment process moving forward. So you'll see I have my very long email address on this slide. You can also reach my inbox by contacting directly townhall@meridiancity.org, and it'll find its way to me, those messages. So yeah, if any of the work that you're doing matches with the work that we might be pursuing or falls under any of these categories and you'd like to get in touch, we'd absolutely love to chat and make sure that you're involved. And so with that, I do want to open it up if there are any questions or any comments. Yes. All right, so the question, I'm going to repeat it just in case the people on Zoom didn't hear. The question was, the Livability Index was last updated in 2018. When is it going to be updated again? It should be updated again in 2022. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's information that we have from an internal standpoint at the city. And so this raises another point. The question was if we know about the number of people who are moving into our community and what the demand is for some of the housing and the roofing that's limited. And so what we're going to be doing leading up to some of that external assessment work, the listening tours, the focus groups, and the sessions in 2022 is focusing more internally on what the city knows and is focused on to get an idea of what some of those opportunities and gaps are as well. So I don't have that information for you off the top of my head, but it is information that we have in the city. All right, I don't see any other questions on Zoom. So with that, I will turn it back to Mayor Simison for Meridian Stars. Thank you.
And I just want to say thank you to Sahan for putting that information out there. You know, one of the things about these town halls, it allows us to share the information. You know, this is being recorded, so we can take this and share it with others so that they can see what this process looks like. And I just want to dovetail on a couple things. So when I first started working for the city many years ago, I looked at what our house, kids per household. I looked at our age, and I've seen how that has changed dramatically over the last 15 years here in our community. And I think if you go and you talk to people that are moving here, you find out a lot of people are moving here because their kids live here, their grandkids live here. So we are seeing our community change and evolve through that time period. In addition, some of just to talk about transportation for one component, because that's always a big thing in Meridian. But the city does have a newly adopted strategic plan, and a lot of the things that you saw in this are part of our strategic plan. So we have our own processes that we are currently working on. And just an example, this last budget year, we did fund our first city transportation line. Because of COVID, they've opted not to launch that because they want to launch it when people feel comfortable getting out in that. But we are seeing some of these things naturally occur in our community over this time. And so we'll kind of see how some of that changes if it makes it into the update when they do that in 2022. But a lot of these things do have some component already in progress, but we'll talk to the community and see what other elements make sense to be focused on, or if we should focus some more time on some of those. So thank you, Sahan, for that overview. And we look forward to seeing what questions this process can help us open the eyes of all of us and see where we want to invest our time and energy. So appreciate it. And now we're going to move on to the last thing this evening. As I mentioned earlier before, this is always one of the special things we like to do. Last year, didn't get to do these in person. We had the Meridian Stars come in and just have a conversation and a picture. But tonight we are happy that we have the people who are going to be recognized with us in the room. So Councilman Hoagland, if you want to come up and just join me, the two of us are going to tag team this evening to do these recognitions. So the Meridian Stars recognizes Meridian residents, businesses that demonstrate commitment to preserving, maintaining, and improving the quality of life and safety in the neighborhoods and the wider community. And we reached out to the community for 5 different categories: large business of the year, small business of the year, youth of the year, senior of the year, neighbor of the year. And so we're just going to go through and talk about the winners in each of these categories. And then we'll ask you to come up, take a picture, and you're happy to say a few words if you would like to at that point in time. But we appreciate everyone being here. And I want to say thank you to all those that nominated people and businesses, and acknowledge the many wonderful people here in our community that were recognized through that nomination process. We live in a great community, and so we're happy and excited to be here this evening. So with that, I'll go ahead and start with large business of the year. During the period of lockdown and quarantine, the team of amazing employees at the Meridian Library District came together to think outside the box in very clever and innovative ways. They expanded their online options with books, magazines, movie rentals, and more. They offered classes online like cooking and preschool song and dance and reading time. They also developed a free of charge home delivery system, which benefited our huge community by bringing the library's offerings directly to our homes. For going above and beyond in their service to our community, they deserve to be recognized as our large business of the year. I'd like to welcome Gretchen Casserati, the Meridian Library District's director, to come up here and say a few words about what inspires her and her team to serve our community and receive the Meridian Star Award. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, Councilman Hoagland, and Sahan. Thank you for having us, and to Jeanette for nominating us. At Meridian Library, our service philosophy is hold doors open. When COVID first hit Idaho in March of 2020, we put our heads together to figure out how could we hold doors open for our community, even when we had to close hours for a short period of time. And boy, did the library staff deliver. Maria, Travis, Nicole, and Barbara adopted their programs, children's programs, for a virtual environment. Jenny and Trevor figured out how to engage teens through Discord. They expanded our reach to community members who previously couldn't attend our programs in our buildings. Our amazing librarians quickly moved to reallocate funding to increase access to ebooks and other materials in our digital collection. Camille single-handedly processed and mailed out hundreds of library cards from her home. Our team worked through a mega challenge to design and implement a totally new service, home delivery, using our existing resources. More than 22,000 items were delivered to almost 7,000 households last year, thanks to the efforts of Camille and Allie, Jane, Betsy, Bree, Yuki, Matt, and Nick, and so many more. Jenna Lee figured out how to add a virtual chat reference feature to our website so staff could answer questions from their homes when they were working remotely, more than 5,000, as a matter of fact. The outreach team never stopped connecting with childcare providers, senior living facilities, and residents in our Section 8 housing apartments to ensure that they didn't lose access to critical sources like Wi-Fi and to keep our kids reading. The ground kept shifting under our feet, but our staff are all commended for their perseverance and dedication. They understand that community service isn't about seeing deficits, but seeing possibilities. Seeing people as both unique individuals with their own gifts, experiences, and backgrounds, as well as collectively members of the same community, living and sharing our time on this earth together. In the book, Community, The Structure of Belonging by Peter Block, the author says, quote, "What makes community building so complex is that it occurs in an infinite number of small steps, sometimes quiet moments that we notice out of the corner of our eye. It calls for us to treat as important the many things that we thought were incidental. An afterthought becomes the point. A comment made in passing defines who we are more than all that came before." We are inspired by our patrons who have been patient and willing to adapt with us during these unprecedented times. Their feedback throughout the year past year and a half has guided us in reimagining library services during the pandemic. And we are inspired by people like Jeanette, who express kindness and care for others, both in their word and through their actions as active community volunteers. The lesson we've learned through this time will shape Meridian Library Services in the years to come, continuing to expand the ways that the community can access library books and programs. The collection of virtual story times and educational videos we've created will be readily available for families, busy families at any time, supplementing our traditional programs. Our home delivery service will continue even as the buildings remain open for browsing, and new library locations will offer more flexible ways for community members to access books and media outside of our regular operating hours. I'd like to thank the city for recognizing the hard work of Meridian Libraries workers, that they have done so much in this last year and given their hearts to their job and service. And I'd like to thank again Jeanette for not just seeing that, but taking the time to submit a nomination to recognize them. Thank you.
And just real quick, Gretchen is one of my favorite people in the world, quite honestly. But you may have noticed once the hand was talking about the livability, it talked about the libraries per thousand. Well, hopefully that's going to change as well, as they've had the tiny library. Unbound has recently reopened in downtown, as well as they're moving forward with their North Meridian branch and plans for South Meridian branch. So we're going to see a real improvement in our libraries here in the next couple of years here in our community. So with that, I'm going to turn to ask Councilman Hoagland to do the next one.
Thank you, Mayor. And it's a privilege for me to introduce our Youth of the Year from Meridian Stars. And it's wonderful to see that day in and day out, this youth works tirelessly on behalf of her peers for the city of Meridian and to make Meridian a better place. And that's something we all want to do. And with our jobs and activities that we get involved with, sometimes we aren't able to do that. And you really have to be intentional about that. And she makes that a priority. She's currently the chair of our government affairs for the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council, which we affectionately refer to as MIAC. And just last week, she did a fantastic job of coordinating and hosting the MIAC candidate forum for the city council and the West Ada school board candidates. And she is just a phenomenal leader and someone who always follows through on her commitments. And if you think back to your high school days, all the activities you had and schoolwork that you may have done, I don't know if everybody did. But she has a lot of plates going on. You know, you think of those spinning plates when they do that. That is what she does. And so for these reasons and more, it is a pleasure to announce Audrey Thompson as our shining light in the community. And that's why she's our Youth of the Year. Come on up, Audrey.
Thank you so much for having me here today. First of all, I would like to talk about what inspires me is also what aspires me. It's the leaders that I see here in my community and the people who have taken the time to personally connect with me, but not only that, take me outside of my comfort zones. When I joined MIAC and I started becoming involved in the community of Meridian, as a young adult, I was purely interested in personal resume building. And I came to realize that there is a greater message beyond myself. And I think that that is what the Meridian City has done for me, is that it's helped me look at what I can do to not only build myself, but to build others at the same time. One of the things that I love about Meridian is that constantly, especially in this chamber room, hot words that you hear are hard work and community. And I am proud to be part of that mission statement, and I hope to uphold that. I would like to thank the City of Meridian for hard workers recognizing hard work. Thank you.
And I would be remiss if I haven't said, I've gotten to know Audrey over the last year and a half as well. And amazing young lady from that standpoint. So congratulations on a well-deserved. And I look forward to seeing where you are going to go in the future. And it's going to be back here in Meridian eventually, I know. Next up, we're going to do our small business of the year. So opened in 1983, Gem State Development Center is the first privately owned and operated development disability agency in Idaho. The center's collaborative network of engaged parents and guardians, industry providers, and disability rights advocates help to promote a disability-friendly environment for all within the Treasure Valley communities. Throughout the pandemic, Gem State Development Center was one of only a few disability agencies to remain open to continue providing vital services to clients. The center provides life skills trained to children and adults with development disabilities. For their exceptional commitment to serving those in need, the team at Gem State Development Center stand out as shining stars. That's why they're our small business of the year. I'd like to welcome Lori Jo, the owner, to come up and share with us why she and her team are motivated to serve the community.
Well, very honored to be here today. Thank you, Mayor and Councilman. I'd like to accept this award based on our employees. They show up every day. They have tireless commitment, and they're always doing their very best. When I was asked to say, think about why I'm doing what we're doing, the two words that kept coming back to me was joy and delight. And through the hard work that we do with the people that we work with, we experience that joy and delight, but we also see that joy and delight in our clients that we work with. I've only been the owner for 2 years. However, I've had a foundation of previous owners, Mark and Rosalie Lampholm. We're not able to be here tonight. But I also have the support of 2 of our other key employees that are here tonight. So I'd like to just take a moment and have them stand and congratulate them for their hard work. Tori Makazuru and Jamie White. And I know we have many employees watching, and I'd like to just extend great gratitude to them and their work every day. Thank you.
These are all exciting and wonderful, but this one in particular is going to be great because this is Senior of the Year. And this is someone who is well-known, especially around Christmas time, because he's making stuff all year long. And it's not Santa Claus. He's known as Meridian's toy maker, and he's been making toys for the Meridian Fire Department for over 2 decades. He's donated wooden toys anonymously until a few years back, his name leaked out. He was known as Santa Claus, but he goes by Al Fleming. So it's wonderful to recognize Al because he funds and makes all the toys in his workshop here in Meridian. And he not only supplies the toys for the Meridian Fire Benevolence Program, but also for the Meridian Police Department, the Boys and Girls Club, local hospitals, the Meridian Children's Museum, and to many local and national charities. He's also supported the Light My Fire organization for many years with toys and table arrangements for the fundraising dinner and auctions. And Al is a rare find. He always thinks of others. He donates his time, his finances, his talent, all in caring for the community. And he does it without recognition or fanfare. But we managed to convince him to come here tonight and recognize him as our Senior of the Year. So Al, come on up. Well, at least I think we convinced him to come up. He is coming up.
I was asked to comment on my motivation. About 15 years, a little more than 15 years ago, I decided to retire from a career as an electrical engineer. And my wife, Shelley, asked me a question. She said, "What are you going to do now that you have all this time off?" And I told her, I said, "We've worked hard all these years, and we lived the American dream, and it's payback time." And she said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I always had a reverence for wood, and what I would like to do is make heirloom toys for needy children." And so I set a goal for myself of 600 toys a year. And since I wanted to make my donations anonymous, I went to different organizations and asked for sponsors who would pick up the toys, and it would be their responsibility to distribute them within their specific organizations. And I've had some wonderful sponsors over the year. Pam Moore from the Meridian Fire Department, she's the one that put in my nomination for this award. And I really am very grateful to her for that. In closing, though, I want to thank the city of Meridian for this recognition. Personally, it has been very, very rewarding for me over the years. And I'm going to continue to do the best I can, although I have to say I'm slowing down after all these years. So with that, again, I want to thank you very much.
I think we could all learn a lot from Al's approach and Having Audrey in the room, the good part is she can continue that approach for the next 40 years and convincing others of that approach. And I think we would all be a better community as we take that on. So lastly, this evening was going to be our neighbor of the year. We're all familiar with those neighbors you just can't live without, the ones who go above and beyond to be welcoming, friendly, and supportive no matter what. Kelly Shaffer is one of those neighbors. Not only does she embody warmth and friendliness in her personality, but she also goes the extra mile to bring her neighbors together through regular social events. Kelly goes out of her way to help others in the community and is always ready to support you with a hand, a smile, or anything else you need. She's one of our community's brightest shining stars, and that's why she's our neighbor of the year. Kelly, please come up here and tell us about what inspires you to do so much for your neighbors.
First of all, thank you all so much. And I have absolutely no business being up here with the other recipients of this award. You all are fabulous and make a community great. And what inspires me is community and connection, because that's all we crave as people. We all want community, we all want connection. That's how we thrive. And I think we can all agree there's a lot of transplants in Meridian. We're all from somewhere else. And what we need is to come together. And so COVID happened and we didn't see our neighbors. We didn't see anybody. And we thought it was the time to bring everyone together. And we started with a small Easter egg hunt. And it blossomed from there. I do it for my kids. I do it for my amazing neighbors. And I don't do it alone. There are so many of us that pitch in and donate their time, their money, their resources, their tools, everything. But I just want to say thank you. And this is an absolutely true honor.
You know, and just taking another quick liberty on that, Kelly is like a lot of people in this community, you know, who do the hard work of the work for their neighbors, whether it's through their HOA or through their personal standpoint. But we really appreciate everyone who goes above and beyond to give their neighbors, friends, family an opportunity to get out and engage with one another. And during COVID, that was definitely something that many people cherish. So thank you. But with that, we thought we'd be done in an hour. We did a pretty good job. So it's 7 o'clock, just a few minutes after. We're going to close the town hall, and those that are here are welcome to have some cake and help celebrate with our winners in the lobby. Or if you have some questions, happy to take those with those in the room afterwards. So have a good night, and thank you for being here.